Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight, you're living as a Roman plebeian, which means you'll be crammed into a smoke-stained tenement with 6 other families, sleeping on straw that crawls with lice, listening to the drip of sewage down the stairwell while you pray the building doesn't collapse in the night. Before we drag you through this fine Roman experience, the hunger, the fire hazards, the cheerful plagues, do me one small favour. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. If you'd prefer these stories without ads, you can join the Patreon. It's linked in the description. And if you want the ultimate immersive experience, consider using a pair of wireless earbuds. They're comfortable, discreet, and designed so you can wear them even while sleeping. I've linked my favourite pair plus other sleep tools in the description. Now, lie back, get comfortable. Let's begin. Your life begins not in marble halls or sunlit atriums, but in a cramped tenement room that reeks of sweat, smoke, and damp straw. Your mother lies on a rough pallet, shivering and sweating through stained linen sheets, while a midwife mutters prayers to the household gods. A clay lamp sputters in the corner shrine, its smoke curling against blackened beams. Every birth in Rome is a gamble, and the odds are rarely in your favour. Your mother clutches at the amulet strung around her neck, calling on divine protection, but the gods, like the magistrates who run the city, do not listen closely to plebeians. The midwife is no healer. She carries no medicine, only charms, oils, and a bronze knife, dulled by years of use. She knows no anatomy beyond rumour and memory. She pushes, pulls, and whispers incantations when the labour grows dangerous. Hemorrhage, infection, suffocation. None of these are understood, much less prevented. For plebeians, childbirth is less a sacred passage than a moment of silent negotiation with death. The walls echo with your mother's cries and finally with a thin wail of your own. That first sound is the only sign you have a chance. Many children make no sound at all and never open their eyes to the city. The midwife lifts you up toward the lamplight and inspects your tiny body. You are frail, but you breathe. Survival is not guaranteed by breath alone. In Rome, every newborn is judged. Weak or unwanted children are carried out and abandoned at the city's margins, left to die in ditches or at temple steps. Officially, your father decides whether you live. He lifts you in his arms, weighing your existence against the cost of feeding you. His expression is hard, his silence long, but in the end, he accepts you. You are not exposed to the cold night. You will remain in the smoky room. You are wrapped in rough cloth, given a name that will never be remembered beyond your family, and placed beside your mother's breast. Her milk is thin, her body weakened by hunger and hard labour. When her milk falters, bread soaked in sour wine or barley gruel is forced into your mouth. It is not nourishing, and it is not sanitary. You choke down grit, sourness, and faint bitterness. This is your first taste of Rome. Not marble, not honey, but spoiled grain steeped in alcohol. The first year is the hardest. Smoke clogs your lungs, vermin crawl through your bedding, and unwashed hands spread fevers without anyone understanding why. There is no medicine, only charms tied around your wrists and amulets pressed to your chest. Neighbours mutter about curses when you cough, and your mother prays to gods who never answer. Children die suddenly and silently. One day you hear a wail, the next the wail is gone, and a family carries out a small bundle for burial. Death is as familiar as breath, so familiar that no one lingers in grief. The city is too crowded with the living to mourn the smallest of its dead. You survive the gauntlet of infancy, and your world expands no further than the insula's staircases and the street outside. You grow up surrounded by siblings, relatives, and lodgers crammed into a single smoky room. Privacy does not exist. Childhood does not exist as a protected state. You are put to work as soon as you can stand, fetching water from the fountain, sweeping the floor, carrying bread back from the market. Scraped knees, broken bones, and festering wounds are part of daily life. You are not precious, you are expected to endure. There is play, but only in stolen scraps of time. Children fashion toys from clay and wood, chase hoops down the filthy streets, or gamble with knucklebones in the dust. You laugh because laughter is all that separates you from despair, but you learn quickly how fragile joy is. Fevers strike without warning. A friend you played with in the street may be gone the next morning, replaced by silence and whispers. Death teaches you the rules of the city faster than any game. You understand by the age of 5 that life is borrowed and easily reclaimed. Food shapes you more than play. Bread is your foundation, coarse loaves distributed when the grain shipments arrive from Egypt or Sicily. You gnaw olives when you're lucky, soak bread in rancid oil when you're not. Water is unsafe, so you're given wine, diluted and sour, even as a child. Your bones grow brittle, your teeth rot early, and your body stays thin and wiry. Meat is a luxury, fruit is rare, sweetness is almost unknown. Hunger is your constant tutor, teaching you patience when there is food, and resignation when there is none. Education is for others. A few boys in your street scratch letters on wax tablets, sent to a schoolroom by parents with spare coins. You are not one of them. Most plebeian children labour instead of learning. Girls are confined to household tasks, training for a future of endless work and childbirth. Your world is not scrolls or speeches, but errands and bruises. Even if you learn a few letters from a neighbour, literacy will never elevate you. For the plebeian, knowledge is ornamental. It fills no stomach and repairs no leaking roof. Religion is constant, stitched into your days like thread through rough cloth. A bulla, a small amulet, is strung around your neck to ward off evil. Your family lights lamps before the shrine each evening, whispering prayers for your survival. Festivals spill into the streets, a blur of drums, costumes, sacrifices, and drunken crowds. You stare wide-eyed at masks and fires, dazzled by the noise. Yet the gods remain distant. Amulets do not mend bones, and prayers do not cool fever. You learn early that the gods, like the senators, have no real concern for children like you. By the time you reach 5, you are already expected to take on the duties of an older child. Childhood is brief, little more than a pause before labour begins. By 7, you haul water, carry baskets, and watch over younger siblings. Your shoulders ache, your hands blister, and you learn quickly that exhaustion is permanent. There are no toys left, no long afternoons, no protection from hardship. Childhood is less a stage of life than a training ground for endless work. The city itself is your tutor. You learn to sleep through shouting neighbours and barking dogs. You learn to dodge refuse tossed from upper windows, to step aside from carts that barrel down narrow streets, to keep your head low when guards prowl nearby. You learn that beggars are everywhere, though no one sees them, and that the wealthy walk past you as if you are invisible. These are the lessons Rome teaches its children: how to endure without complaint, how to vanish into the crowd, how to survive unnoticed. Time passes. You survive childhood, and survival has only tethered you more tightly to the same dark tenement where you were born. Now, in your late teens, you're old enough to work, old enough to pay rent, and old enough to know that the building that houses you is not a home but a trap. The structure is called an insula, an island, though it feels more like a cage, 6 stories of timber and cheap brick, wedged between other crumbling blocks in a city that packs humanity tighter than grain in a sack. One room is all your family has, a single space that holds everyone, along with the few belongings that rats haven't chewed through. The air is heavy with the stench of smoke, sweat, and chamber pots. This is the reward for surviving childhood. A roof over your head that might crush you at any moment. The walls of the insula are thin enough that you can hear your neighbours breathe. Floors creak with every step. Ceilings leak when the rains come, and cracks run like veins through the plaster. Timber beams groan when the wind shifts, and each night you wonder if this will be the night the roof gives way. Fires sweep through Rome constantly, and here there is no escape. The staircases act like chimneys, pulling smoke upward and trapping families before they can reach the street. The building is too tall to fight flames with buckets, too crowded to contain the blaze. Everyone knows someone who has lost their family to an insular fire, and everyone knows it will happen again. On the ground floor live the lucky few who can afford higher rent. They enjoy light, air, and a better chance of escape when disaster comes. You are not among them. You climb the steep wooden stairs every day, past walls stained black with smoke, past neighbours who shove past without meeting your eyes. Each floor is darker than the one below, until your room feels more like a storage loft than a dwelling. At night the stairs become treacherous, the boards rotten, the railings loose. A single misstep can mean a shattered leg, and a shattered leg can mean the end of your working life. Space is so tight that privacy is a foreign idea. You share your one room with siblings, cousins, and sometimes strangers who rent a corner when coins are short. The straw you sleep on reeks of sweat and vermin, and lice crawl from body to body unchecked. The air is thick with the stink of bodies, the bitter smoke of oil lamps, and the ammonia of waste jars that sit too long before they are tipped from the window. When the jar empties onto the street below, it mingles with the tide of refuse that flows down Rome's alleys, a tide as regular as the Tiber itself. Noise never leaves you. From below comes the endless chorus of vendors shouting prices, carts rattling across stones, and animals braying. From above you hear every cough, every quarrel, every infant wail, every couple pressed together with no walls to conceal them. Sleep comes fitfully, broken by footsteps, arguments, or the crash of pottery hitting the floor. Silence does not exist in Rome, and the insula magnifies the city's clamour rather than shutting it out. Rent is another form of suffocation. Landlords demand payment without lifting a finger to maintain the buildings. If you fail to pay, you are thrown out, no matter how long you have lived here. Repairs are left to tenants, who hammer boards over buckling walls and splintered stairs, praying they hold. Entire insulae collapse without warning, burying their residents in rubble, while the landlord shrugs and orders another just like it to be built on the ruins. Your home is never secure, it is only tolerated until the walls give way. The pests are relentless. Rats scurry across the floor at night, stealing crumbs and gnawing through baskets. Fleas infest bedding until your legs are covered in angry welts. Lice live permanently in your scalp, their bites raw beneath your nails. Even the grain you bring home writhes with weevils, too common to bother picking out. You eat bread flecked with insects and drink wine soured with contamination, because there is no alternative. Cleanliness is impossible. Dirt is not an accident here. It is structural, woven into every wall, every floorboard, every breath you take. Water must be carried from fountains in the street. You haul it up the stairs until your shoulders burn, spilling half before you reach the door. There is never enough. Bathing at home is impossible. The room is too small, the water too precious. You go to the public baths when you can, enduring the heat and the crowds for the illusion of cleanliness. Most days you simply live with the grime, because the city makes it inescapable. Cooking is its own danger. You light a clay brazier in the corner, the smoke filling the room, the embers threatening to leap into straw or timber. The scorch marks on the walls remind you of past disasters, moments when a single overturned pot nearly ended your entire street. Yet you light the brazier anyway, because cold bread and olives cannot sustain you. To eat is to risk fire. To risk fire is to tempt ruin. There is no choice but to risk it again tomorrow. You still see children darting up and down the stairs, just as you once did, their laughter echoing off cracked plaster. But now you're older, and instead of laughing with them, you watch with weary recognition. You survived your own childhood tumbles, but not everyone does. Childhood here is not innocent, it is reckless, shaped by the constant threat of death disguised as play. Illness spreads like smoke in the insula. One cough becomes a chorus within days. Fever takes hold, running unchecked through families. No one flees, there is nowhere to go. You endure waiting to see who will recover and who will be carried down the stairs wrapped in cloth. The insula is not sentimental. As soon as the body is gone, the space it leaves behind is filled by someone else. Tenants change, but the building endures, indifferent to the lives it grinds down. At night, you lie on straw, staring at the dark beams above. Summer suffocates with heat, winter gnaws with cold, and every season stinks of oil, smoke, and sweat. Lice itch across your scalp. Rats scuttle in the corners. Neighbours argue through thin walls. You are old enough now to understand that the insula is not temporary. It is your life, your inheritance, the only place you will ever afford to live. A few more years pass. One morning your hunger wakes you before the sun does. At 20 years old, the dull ache in your stomach is as familiar as the creak of the stairs or the shouts of neighbours in the street below. You push yourself up from the straw and stretch stiff limbs, already aware that the day will begin the way all days begin, with the search for bread. The air in the room is thick with the stale odour of smoke and bodies, but it is hunger that drives you out the door. Jar under your arm, a few coins clutched tightly in your fist. If fortune smiles, you will claim a portion of grain from the dole. If not, you will settle for whatever stale bread or scraps you can afford. Rome does not feed you out of kindness. It feeds you reluctantly, as though insulted by the effort. The grain dole is praised as the blessing of empire, but anyone who lives on it knows better. Shipments arrive from Sicily and Egypt, carried upriver to the granaries, before being doled out in the forum. Politicians boast about the generosity of Rome, yet the rations are always uncertain and always insufficient. A storm in the Mediterranean, a pirate raid on the coast, or a corrupt official skimming from the stockpiles. Any of these can tip the city into hunger. When the grain is late, the city roars with unrest. Crowds gather in the forum, citizens howl with rage, and soldiers are sent to club them back into line. Speeches are made about patience, sacrifice, and duty, but speeches feed no one. On ordinary days, the wait itself is a punishment. You shuffle forward in a line that coils endlessly through the streets, surrounded by neighbours groaning with the same emptiness. The sun climbs higher, while flies circle overhead, and still the line crawls forward. By the time you reach the front, your throat is dry and your patience gone. The clerk does not meet your eyes. He tips grain into your jar with a bored flick of his wrist, mutters a tally, and waves you away. This is Rome's generosity, a scoop of raw grain measured without care, and the knowledge that you will return tomorrow to beg again. Bread is your foundation, and it grinds you down as surely as the stones that mill it. The loaves are coarse, full of grit from the millstones, leaving dust between your teeth with every bite. Olives appear on your table when they can be afforded, their brine cutting through the blandness of the bread, their pits cracked between your teeth when hunger makes you careless. Oil is poured when you're fortunate, though it often tastes rancid, slicking the crust with a sour tang that clings to your tongue. Meat is not for you. It exists in the feasts of patricians and in the markets where you walk like a shadow, unable to afford the smallest cut. For you, meat is a smell, not a meal. Water is no comfort. It runs from fountains across the city, but even when it looks clear, it is rarely safe. You have learned, as all Romans have, to drink wine instead. Not the sweet, honeyed wine praised by poets, but cheap red liquid thinned with water, until it is sour and thin. You gulp it because it is safer than water, not because you want it. By 20, you already know the dull buzz of alcohol well enough to be bored of it. The wealthy raise goblets in marble halls and toast to victories, but you swallow sour wine in clay cups just to wash the bread down your throat. It leaves headaches, it leaves weakness, and still, it is the only drink you trust. Famine is never far away. It hangs over the city like a storm cloud, ready to burst at the smallest disruption. When the grain ships are late, you feel the panic ripple outward instantly. Prices soar, markets are stripped bare, and desperation takes hold. Mothers push forward with children in their arms, old men collapse in the heat, and soldiers drag bodies from the crush of the crowd. Rumours spread faster than bread, that the gods are angry, that the emperor hoards the supply, that there will be no ships at all this season. You live with the knowledge that Rome, for all its marble and armies, is always one bad harvest away from chaos. The contrast between rich and poor burns most sharply when you pass the markets. Stalls overflow with honey cakes, roasted meats, fish stewed with herbs, fruit piled high in baskets. You breathe the scents but never taste them. They mock your emptiness as you pass, coins in your fist too few to buy more than stale bread. Sometimes you gnaw on loaves baked days earlier, the crusts hard as stone, your jaw aching as you force it down. You wash the dust from your mouth with thin wine, pretending it fills you. It never does. Festivals bring a brief reprieve. During the games, food is sometimes handed out to the crowds. Bread is tossed from carts, figs are pressed into children's hands, and citizens cheer as if Rome has given them plenty. You join the surge of bodies reaching upward for a crust or a handful of dried fruit, caught in the frenzy. For an afternoon, it feels almost like abundance. But it is not abundance, it is spectacle. Generosity designed to distract you from the emptiness that returns the next day. By morning the bread is gone, and your stomach groans as faithfully as ever. Cooking in the insula is an ordeal. Grain must be boiled, oil heated, fires lit. The brazier smokes until your eyes sting, sparks threatening to ignite the straw. You remember neighbours who lost everything to fire, walls still bearing the marks of flames that licked them years ago. Yet you cook anyway, because cold bread and olives cannot sustain you. Eating is a gamble. You risk fire because hunger leaves no choice. Even a meagre meal of gritty bread and bitter oil requires courage. Malnutrition shapes you slowly, invisibly, until you notice the difference between your own body and the ideal carved in marble. The statues show men broad-shouldered, strong, unblemished. You are thin, wiry, bent by labour. Your teeth ache, your bones feel light, and your strength never seems enough for the work demanded of you. This is the body Rome creates from its plebeians, a body not made for triumph, but for toil. No artist will carve you into stone. You will be remembered, if at all, only in the dust of the city you kept alive. The flavour of Rome is not sweetness, not plenty, not the balanced diet philosophers pretend its citizens enjoy. It is the grit of bread between your teeth. It is the sour burn of wine in your throat. It is rancid oil coating your tongue and olives shriveled from the heat. You eat not for pleasure, but for endurance. Some nights you fall asleep on an empty stomach, listening to it groan louder than the voices of your neighbours. Some mornings you wake to find no bread left in the basket, no coins left in the jar. Hunger does not make you noble. It makes you restless, bitter, and ready to riot the moment the grain fails. Still, the city does not wait. Full stomach or empty, Rome demands your labour. You chew the last crust, wipe oil from your hands, and force down another gulp of sour wine. Work is never promised. Rome swarms with men like you, plebeians waiting to be chosen, day labourers standing shoulder to shoulder in hope that someone needs their strength. You join the line near the forum, where merchants and builders look for cheap hands. Some days the line moves quickly, men called forward for hauling or sweeping or lifting. Other days you stand for hours, watching the wealthy pass in their polished sandals, while no one spares a glance for you. The uncertainty gnaws more than hunger. No work today means no food tomorrow, and the city, with its senators and temples and marble arches, does not notice or care. When you're chosen, the work is always heavier than the coins it earns. You might be hired to carry amphorae of wine or oil, jars so large you stagger under their weight. The clay digs into your shoulders as you shuffle from carts to storerooms, merchants snapping at you to hurry. The coins you receive at the end of the task feel like mockery compared to the ache that lingers in your back for days. Another job might be unloading sacks of grain at the market, each one rough against your skin, dust filling your throat until you cough black grit. The pay is barely enough for a loaf of bread, and yet you take it because refusal is unthinkable. The docks are the worst and the most common. Ships crowd the Tiber, unloading grain, oil and timber, and the need for bodies never ends. You stand on the planks slick with river water, lifting until your arms burn and your legs tremble. Overseers bellow orders, while holding rods ready to strike anyone who moves too slowly. A twisted ankle or a slipped grip can mean disaster, but the overseer shrugs if you collapse. There is always another man waiting in line, eager to take your place. In Rome, lives are cheaper than ropes, and no one will remember the labourer crushed beneath a barrel. Not every day is spent hauling. Sometimes you're taken on to sweep a stall after hours, scraping spoiled vegetables, bones and fish guts into heaps for the pigs or dogs. The stench clings to you, sour and greasy, impossible to wash away with the little water you can spare. Payment may come as a few coins, or it may come as the scraps themselves. You swallow your disgust and eat, because hunger speaks louder than pride. On rare occasions you find lighter work, helping a merchant stack jars or watching over goods while he haggles. The pay is worse, but at least your body is not breaking beneath a load. You take it anyway, because Rome does not let you be choosy. Fear follows you through every task. There is no safety net, no patron looking out for you, no family fortune to fall back on. If you fail to work, you starve. If you are injured, you are discarded. Neighbours might help for a day, but they too are poor, and their kindness cannot stretch far. The city's wealth pours into temples, baths and games, but none of it trickles down to you. You are a citizen in name, a beast of burden in practice, valued only for what you can carry before you break. The Forum and its marble facades only sharpen the bitterness. Senators make speeches about the glory of Rome, while you stoop under baskets of rubble, sweeping their filth from the streets. They call the plebeians the lifeblood of the city, yet you are treated more like wastewater flowing into the gutter. You hear their words, but you feel the truth in your shoulders and in your stomach. Rome is great because you're expendable. By midday, the sun burns against your skin, and the city's stones radiate heat until the air itself feels like an oven. Sweat stings your eyes, salt drying into your tunic. Your hands are blistered from rope burns. Your back bent from carrying loads not meant for men. The coins in your pouch clink faintly. So few they feel insulting after the hours you've given. You try not to count them, because counting only makes the ache in your body feel heavier. On days when the work is scarce, you walk the markets to see if anyone needs an errand runner or an extra hand. You hover near stalls where the smell of roasting meat tempts you, though you know it is not for you. You move quickly, because standing too long invites suspicion. Guards prowl the Forum, watching for theft, and a poor man lingering too close to a merchant is always guilty in their eyes. A false accusation can bring a beating, and the crowd will not interfere. In Rome, the law protects the strong, not the hungry. As the day wears on, exhaustion spreads through your limbs until every step feels weighted. The roar of the city does not quiet. Carts still rattle, vendors still shout, beggars still cry out from the corners, but it all blurs into one ceaseless noise. The only sound you notice clearly is the clink of your few coins and the groan of your stomach reminding you that they will be gone by tomorrow. You have worked yourself hollow, yet tomorrow demands the same labour, the same pain, for the same meagre reward. You try to make your way home after work, but the city will not let you. The moment you step away from the forum, you're swallowed again by the endless noise. It presses in from every side, a living creature made of human voices, iron wheels, hooves, and the sharp cries of animals. The streets do not empty when the day's labour ends. They only change shape. Merchants still hawk what they have not sold, shouting themselves hoarse to attract buyers. Beggars raise their voices in desperate pleas, waving their thin arms at passers-by who will not meet their eyes. Priests chant before small shrines tucked into corners, their prayers competing with the curses of cart drivers locked in endless argument over who has the right of way. The sound never fades, it only collides, layer upon layer, until your ears ache with the weight of it. Carts dominate the streets, their wheels grinding over stone, each turn a thunderclap against the walls of the buildings. Drivers bellow at their mules and oxen, snapping whips that crack against hides already scarred with welts. The animals bray in protest, dragging loads of grain, amphorae, and timber through alleys far too narrow for them. When two carts meet head-on, there is no solution but shouting. Drivers scream at one another, each claiming priority, while those on foot squeeze against walls or risk being crushed beneath wheels. You know the danger too well. One careless step, one stumble, and you could vanish beneath a cart in an instant. The city stones are stained with the reminders of those who failed to move fast enough. Fights break out with little provocation. A shove in the crowd, a coin dropped and claimed by two hands, an insult shouted too loudly. Any spark can ignite. You hear the sudden shift in the noise when it happens, the sharp escalation of voices, the ring of fists against flesh, the clatter of overturned baskets. Crowds gather quickly, drawn as if by instinct to the spectacle of violence. Sometimes soldiers arrive to break it up, swinging clubs until bodies scatter. Other times they simply watch, letting plebeians exhaust their fury on one another before wandering off. You learn to keep your head down and your body out of the way. Rome is a tinderbox of tempers, and you have no desire to be struck by accident. Animals add their own chaos to the chorus. Goats tug against their tethers, bleating as they're dragged through streets, while pigs squeal and scatter at the first hint of danger. Chickens flap from baskets when lids come loose, their wings beating frantically against the faces of anyone nearby. Dogs prowl in packs, nosing through refuse, snapping at one another when scraps are found. The smell of the animals mixes with human sweat, rotting vegetables, spilled wine, and dung piled in corners. You breathe it in with every step, your stomach turning as you try to distinguish one stench from the next. The city smells of waste because it is waste, compacted into stone and left to ferment under the sun. Vendors are relentless, their shouts rising above the rest. They thrust their goods toward you, figs bruised from the day's handling, olives slick with brine, scraps of cloth too thin to last a season. They wave hands and shout prices, voices cracking from hours of repetition. Their cries overlap in a cacophony of competing offers, no single voice clear enough to follow. You push through them as quickly as you can, your eyes fixed on the street ahead, your pouch clutched tightly. A distracted moment is an invitation for theft, and thieves thrive in the press of noise and bodies. You know better than to linger. Even sacred spaces cannot quiet the city. Shrines dot the corners, small altars to household gods or minor deities, and each has its attendants calling for offerings. They sing hymns or chant invocations, voices rising above the din, but even they are drowned by the clash of everything else. Incense drifts from the shrines, sweet smoke curling upward, but it cannot disguise the reek of the streets. You pause only long enough to toss a crumb of bread or a pinch of oil, not out of devotion, but habit. The gods may or may not be listening, but to ignore them altogether feels reckless in a city where death waits at every corner. The crowds never thin. You press shoulder to shoulder with strangers, your body jostled from every side. Elbows dig into your ribs, knees knock against yours, and the constant push and pull leaves you stumbling. You cling to your pouch as though it were your life, for in some ways it is. A thief can empty it in a heartbeat, leaving you without food for days. When you catch sight of watchful eyes in the crowd, you shift your body to shield your coins. They dart away, searching for someone less wary. The press of the masses is suffocating, a tide you cannot resist, only endure until you're spit out in some other part of the city. Even the walls echo the chaos. Sound bounces off the close-packed insulae, amplifying until every shout seems doubled, every cartwheel thunderous. The narrow streets trap the clamour, funneling it directly into your skull. You long for quiet, for the faintest reprieve, but Rome never grants it. Noise is the pulse of the city, proof of its life, but it feels more like proof of its madness. You wonder if silence even exists anymore, or if it is only something poets invented to torment you with images of peace you will never know. By the time you near your own neighbourhood, the chaos has worn you thin. Your ears ring with the constant shouting, your head throbs with the pressure of sound, and your body aches from being shoved and jostled. The noise does not fade as you approach your insula. If anything, it grows sharper. Children scream as they chase one another up the stairs. Women argue over spilled water. Men quarrel loudly over debts. A dog barks furiously at nothing, its voice bouncing through the alley like a hammer striking metal. Every sense feels raw, your mind restless, even as your body longs for sleep. At last you reach your insula, shouldering past the stink of waste jars and the cries of neighbours. You climb the stairs slowly, each step heavy with exhaustion, ears still ringing from the streets. The room you return to offers no quiet, no reprieve. The air is foul, your skin is sticky, and your spirit is ragged from the day's assault. You collapse onto the straw, filthy and restless. The next day, you seek a rare moment of comfort at the baths. Rome is never quiet, never gentle, but the baths are supposed to be the one place where the poor and the wealthy alike find relief. That is the story told by orators and poets. In truth, the baths are another crowded marketplace, another stage for the city's noise, and another reminder that Rome does not care whether you're clean or diseased. Still, you go, because the alternative is to remain in your insula with skin caked in soot and the stink of labour clinging to you like a second tunic. The building looms ahead, larger than anything you could ever enter without paying. Steam spills from the doorways, carrying the smell of hot water and unwashed bodies. You hand over the few coins needed to enter and step into the tepidarium, the warm room where the air clings heavy to your skin. The noise hits you first. Dozens of voices bounce off the high walls, amplified by stone until they crash together in a constant roar. Men argue politics, gossip about neighbours, complain about prices and mock one another's bodies with cruel laughter. Every corner hums with chatter, every alcove filled with bodies pressed too close for comfort. The promise of peace dissolves the moment you cross the threshold. You strip down, folding your tunic and setting it aside in a corner. It is never safe to leave your belongings unattended, so you keep your eyes on them even as you move forward. Theft is as common here as anywhere in Rome, and you have no patron or guard to protect you if your only tunic disappears. The attendants watch but do nothing. They are as likely to take a bribe from the thief as they are to stop him. Nakedness only deepens your sense of vulnerability. You step onto the wet stone floor, your feet slipping slightly on the film of oil and dirt left behind by countless others. The baths promise cleansing, but the water itself tells another story. Before you enter, you scrape your skin with a strigil, a curved metal tool that drags sweat, oil, and dirt from your body. The man beside you does the same, his strigil squealing against his skin, leaving streaks of filth on the stone floor. Everyone shares the same tools, passing them back and forth without thought. The strigil is meant to cleanse, yet it spreads whatever crawls on the body of one man to another. You try not to think about it as you scrape, though the sight of lice wriggling in the oil makes it impossible to forget. You hand the tool to the next man, your stomach twisting as you imagine what will be passed back to you. The warm pools draw you in, promising relief. You lower yourself into the water, feeling the heat seep into your aching muscles. For a moment, you close your eyes, pretending that this is comfort. Then the smell reaches you. Not incense, not fresh water, but the unmistakable reek of bodies steeped together for too long. The water carries a greasy sheen, a mixture of oil, sweat, and whatever diseases the last man carried. The man to your left sneezes, wiping his nose with his hand, before plunging it back into the water. The man to your right coughs, a deep rattling sound that makes you instinctively lean away. You are surrounded, hemmed in by dozens of others, your skin brushing against theirs in the crush. Whatever you came to wash away has only been exchanged for something worse. The caldarium, the hot room, offers no more comfort. You step into the steam and are struck by the closeness of the air, thick and suffocating. Fires burn beneath the floor, heating the stone until the room itself seems to exhale. Men sit shoulder to shoulder, sweat pouring from them in rivers, dripping onto the floor to mingle with the grime. The steam fogs your vision, blurring faces until all that remains are shapes, voices, and the overwhelming smell of bodies. You sweat as if labouring again, your lungs struggling to draw breath in the humid haze. Those around you laugh, boast, or argue, but you feel only the weight of heat pressing against your skull. The frigidarium, the cold pool, is supposed to refresh. You plunge into it after the suffocating steam, gasping as the chill bites into your flesh. For an instant, it feels sharp, cleansing. Then you notice the floating debris, hair, bits of dirt, the unmistakable film of oil clinging to the surface. The men around you splash and shout, their rough play sending waves against your chest. You force yourself to endure, knowing the plunge is part of the ritual, yet you emerge no cleaner than before. Your skin is clammy, your stomach unsettled, and you wonder how many illnesses are exchanged in this single pool each day. The baths are not only for cleansing, but for business. Everywhere you turn, men are bargaining. A merchant speaks loudly about his prices, boasting that his grain is the best in the market. Another man whispers about debts, trying to strike a deal before his creditors catch him. Groups gather in corners to gossip about politics, spinning rumours of senators, tribunes, and generals. You overhear arguments about grain shortages, whispers of riots, complaints about corrupt officials. No one speaks softly. Every word is shouted to rise above the din, every secret made public. Even here, surrounded by naked flesh, men carry on as if in the forum, their voices filling the air until it is impossible to think. What you notice most, however, is the scrutiny. Eyes roam freely in the baths, men glance at scars, at muscles, at the signs of wealth or weakness written on the body. Every mark is a story, and every story is judged. The rich display themselves without shame, reclining against the stone, their flesh plump from indulgence. The poor sit hunched, ribs showing, skin marked with the lines of labour. You feel the gaze of others on your own thin frame, the wiry muscles earned not from training, but from carrying loads too heavy for too long. You are weighed and dismissed in an instant, your poverty plain in every line of your body. Rome allows no escape from judgment, not even in the bath. By the time you retrieve your tunic, your body feels no cleaner than when you arrived. Your skin is coated with oil, your scalp still itches, and your lungs feel heavy with the damp air you've breathed. You watch your clothing nervously, half expecting it to be gone, and sigh with relief when it remains where you left it. Dressing again, you notice the fabric clings to your still damp skin, and you feel filthier than before. The baths promise renewal, but you emerge feeling only heavier, as if you've absorbed the dirt and disease of 100 men. You return home from the baths with damp hair, itching skin, and a sour taste in your mouth that the wine did not cover. The first thing you do before even settling onto the straw is light oil before the household gods. The shrine sits in a small niche carved into the wall, a space as blackened by smoke as the beams above it. Clay figurines of the Lairs and Penates peer out with expressionless eyes. Their face is blurred by years of soot. You place a pinch of incense on the flame, watching the smoke curl upward, and mutter the same words you have muttered since you were a child. It is less faith than habit, less devotion than obligation. Rome may give you nothing, but it demands this much from you, a daily offering to the gods of your ancestors. The shrine is not impressive. The wealthy display elaborate household altars, decorated with marble and bronze, their gods adorned with gold leaf and fine cloth. Yours is chipped clay and cracked stone, a poor man's shrine for a poor man's gods. Still, you bow your head, because even broken gods are safer than none. You ask them for protection from fire, from famine, from sickness, though you know they will not grant it. The gods listen to senators, to generals, to emperors. For a plebeian in a cramped room on the 4th floor of an insula, their ears are deaf, but to neglect them would feel reckless, like tempting disaster in a city already overflowing with it. Religion is everywhere in Rome. Every crossing has a shrine, every street a small altar. You cannot move through the city without brushing against the divine. Priests chant in the forum, haruspices study the entrails of sacrificed animals, augurs watch the sky for omens in the flight of birds. The city is obsessed with signs, with hints of the gods' intentions. Every sneeze, every thunderclap, every unusual birth is read as a message. You are told to believe that the gods guide Rome, that every triumph and disaster is written in their will. But the only messages you receive are hunger, filth, and exhaustion. If the gods are speaking, they are laughing. Festivals are constant, a calendar packed so tightly with holy days that it sometimes feels as though Rome does nothing but worship. At least that is what the officials claim. For you, festivals are less about devotion than disruption. They fill the streets with noise, with parades of costumed men carrying banners and idols, with processions that choke alleys until no one can pass. Priests demand sacrifices, animals bellowing as their throats are cut, blood soaking the stones while the crowd cheers. Incense clouds the air, sweet smoke clinging to your tunic, though it does nothing to mask the stench of blood and dung. You stand in the crowd because everyone must stand in the crowd, your voice joining in the chants, though your heart is elsewhere. Refusal would mark you as impious, and impiety brings suspicion as surely as theft. Sacrifices drain what little you have. Even the poor are expected to contribute. A coin, a handful of grain, a crust of bread. Priests say the gods require these offerings, that Rome survives because of them, but you know the gods will never notice your crumbs. Still you give them, because not giving feels dangerous. If a fever spreads through the insula tomorrow, it will be blamed on the neighbour who forgot his offering. If the grain ships are late, it will be because someone in your street angered the gods. Religion does not comfort you. It polices you, binding you with rituals that never ease your burden. Omens are treated with deadly seriousness. When lightning splits the sky, men mutter about Jupiter's will. When a bird flies in the wrong direction, augurs proclaim doom. You have seen entire assemblies dismissed because the augurs declared the signs unfavourable. The city halts because a chicken refused to eat its grain, yet no one halts when children starve in the streets. You are told to trust these signs, to accept that the gods reveal their plans through feathers and entrails. But you cannot help but notice that the gods' messages always seem to align with the ambitions of the powerful. A general finds favourable omens when he seeks war, unfavourable ones when his rival does. The gods are convenient, pliable, and profitable, but only for those at the top. The temples are no more reassuring than the shrines. Their columns rise high above you. Their marble gleams in the sun. Their priests chant in measured tones. You climb their steps to offer coins, bowing before statues that tower over you, eyes carved in stone that seem to look past you entirely. The scale is overwhelming, designed to remind you of your smallness. You are told that Rome endures because the gods favour it, that your survival depends on their blessing. Yet you leave each temple as hungry, as tired, as forgotten as when you entered. The gods receive sacrifice, you receive nothing in return. Even death is ruled by religion. Funerals fill the streets with processions, masks of ancestors carried high, chants echoing through the alleys. You watch as bodies are carried past, wrapped and laid on pyres, smoke curling upward to join the smoke of 1,000 other fires. Priests mutter prayers, families wail, coins are pressed into the mouths of the dead for their journey to the underworld. You know that when your time comes, if your family can afford it, the same rites will be given to you. And if they cannot, you will be buried quickly, nameless, your spirit wandering. Religion promises peace after death, but only if you can pay for it. Even the afterlife demands a fee. What strikes you most is how inescapable it all is. Religion is not a choice. It is woven into every act, every day. You light the lamp at the shrine in the morning. You toss a crumb at the corner altar. You march in processions whether you believe or not. The city enforces devotion as firmly as it enforces taxes. You are never allowed to forget the gods, though they forget you with ease. The rituals give the illusion of order, but they are only another weight on your shoulders. You bow, you chant, you sacrifice, and still the roof may collapse, the fever may strike, the grain may fail. By nightfall, the city swells with the noise of celebration. Drums beat in the streets, flutes shriek, and crowds surge toward the festival grounds. Lanterns sway in the alleys, smoke rises from altars, and chants echo against the walls of the insula. Children laugh, men shout, women sing, all of them swept into the current of ritual and revelry. You stand at your window, listening to the chaos, knowing you will be expected to join tomorrow. For now, you light another pinch of incense, watching it vanish into the air as quickly as your hope. The next morning you shuffle into the Colosseum, carried along by the surge of bodies lured by the promise of free bread and blood. The crowd presses close from every side, a tide of plebeians, freedmen, and even some citizens of higher rank who prefer spectacle to silence. The air is thick with the smell of sweat, cheap perfume, and the acrid smoke from food vendors who cluster at the entrances. Your stomach growls as you catch the scent of hot bread and roasted meat, though you know the free portions will be little more than crusts flung from baskets into grasping hands. It does not matter. You are here because Rome demands your attendance. If the city cannot give you peace, it can at least distract you with slaughter. The arena looms ahead, stone arches rising above the teeming masses, its walls already blackened by soot and weather. You file into the stands, pressed between strangers, your knees jammed against the back of the man in front of you. There is no comfort, only bodies stacked upon bodies, voices rising until they echo like thunder in the open air. You find a seat, if it can be called that, and wait, the heat of the sun baking the stone beneath you. Already the noise is deafening. Cheers, chants, jeers, the sound of tens of thousands, impatient for blood. At last the games begin. The announcer's voice booms across the arena, though you cannot make out the words above the din. What matters is the spectacle. First come the hunts. Exotic beasts dragged from far-off provinces are unleashed into the sand. You watch as lions leap upon tethered deer, as leopards slash at goats, as bears roar and lumber until they are brought down by hunters armed with spears. The crowd erupts, the violence feeding something in them that hunger never could. You cheer too, because it is easier to be part of the roar than to sit in silence, marked as unenthusiastic. Your voice joins the tide, though your heart feels strangely absent from it. Next come the executions. Criminals, slaves, and prisoners of war are dragged into the arena, their bodies trembling beneath the gaze of tens of thousands. They are forced to reenact myths, Orpheus torn apart by beasts, Prometheus chained while birds tear at his flesh. Sometimes they are simply cast into the sand and left to the animals. The cruelty is theatrical, carefully arranged for maximum effect. The crowd cheers louder at these deaths than at the hunts. Bread is thrown into the stands at the same time, coins scattered into eager hands, the generosity of Rome entwined with the spectacle of death. You catch a crust tossed your way and bite into it, the grit of sand still clinging to the surface, and cheer because that is what is expected. Finally, the gladiators. The crowd surges to its feet as the gates creak open and men stride into the arena, steel flashing in the sun. They salute, their voices carrying even over the roar. Some are professionals trained in the ludus, hardened by years of combat. Others are slaves or prisoners, forced into the sand to entertain those who hold power over them. They fight with swords, spears, tridents, nets, shields, weapons chosen as much for drama as for efficiency. You watch as they clash, blades ringing, shields splintering, blood spraying into the dust. The crowd roars at every strike, every stumble, every death. There is no escape from the roar. It rises and falls like the sea, drowning all thought. When a gladiator falls to his knees, beaten and bloodied, the crowd surges into a frenzy. Hands rise, thumbs out, demanding judgment. Will he live or will he die? The emperor or the editor of the games decides, but the crowd exerts its will through its noise. You raise your hand like the others, though whether you point up or down matters little. The man's fate is sealed by forces greater than you. A gesture is all Rome requires of you, the illusion of participation in a spectacle built on another man's suffering. For a moment, you're swept away by the power of it. The bread in your mouth dulls the ache in your stomach. The roar of the crowd fills your ears, and the sight of blood on sand distracts you from your own exhaustion. You forget the insula, the hunger, the endless labour. You forget yourself, lost in the rhythm of violence and applause. This is the true genius of Rome. Not marble, not conquest, but distraction. It keeps the poor quiet not with kindness, but with carnage. Yet beneath the roar lies a whisper you cannot silence. It tells you that one day it could be you in the sand. Plebeians have found themselves there before, condemned for debts, for theft, for angering the wrong patron. You are not immune. As you watch a gladiator stumble, his blood staining the dust, you imagine your own body in his place, bones breaking beneath blows, the crowd roaring for your death. It is not difficult to picture. You live close enough to the edge that one slip, one mistake, could push you into the arena. Today you cheer. Tomorrow, you might be the one they cheer against. The games stretch for hours. Blood soaks into sand, bodies are dragged away, new ones sent in. The sun beats down, baking the arena until the air itself feels suffocating. The smell of iron, sweat, and dung clings to your nostrils, mingling with the acrid smoke from the food cellars. You grow weary of cheering, your throat raw, your ears ringing. Still you shout because silence is noticed, and being noticed is dangerous. You let the noise carry you, hollow and automatic, until your voice is nothing but another grain in the thunder of the crowd. When the games finally end, the crowd spills out into the streets, drunk on noise and blood. Breadcrumbs scatter from torn baskets, wine jars clink as they are carried home, and voices echo with retellings of the best strikes, the most gruesome deaths, the most merciful reprieves. You walk with them, though your body feels heavy, your mind dulled. The roar still hums in your ears even as you step into the open air, fading only slowly as the streets reclaim their own noise. You clutch the crust of bread you caught earlier, chewing it mechanically, tasting only dust. The distraction has worked for a time, but reality seeps back quickly. The crowd disperses, but the filth remains. The sand is stained, the air is fouled, and the diseases that spread in such gatherings cling to the bodies of those who attended. You cough into your hand, your throat raw, your lungs tight. You tell yourself it is only the dust of the arena, but you know better. Your health deteriorates over the next few days until finally you collapse with fever in your insula, the straw beneath you damp with sweat, your limbs too heavy to lift. The air reeks of oil smoke, waste jars, and mildew from the walls. Your chest burns, your head throbs, and your skin alternates between fire and ice. Neighbours shuffle past the door, muttering about plague. They avert their eyes, whispering that your family must have angered the gods. In Rome, sickness is as much a social curse as a physical one. You are treated as though you carry death in your breath, which in this city may be true enough. Disease spreads through the insula, like smoke through a chimney. The staircases funnel contagion, from one floor to the next, each cough echoing upward until everyone knows the sound. Children waste away first, their ribs sharp beneath skin stretched too thin. The elderly follow, their lungs filling with fluid until their breath rattles like stones in a jar. The strong are only spared for a time. When fever comes, it burns through flesh indiscriminately. The city is too crowded to isolate, too filthy to clean, too indifferent to prevent. Every day more bodies are carried down the stairs, wrapped in cloth, their faces hidden, their names forgotten before the smoke of the pyre has drifted away. The water you drink is poison, dressed as purity. The fountains are fed by aqueducts, but once the water passes through the city, it mingles with filth. Buckets dipped into cisterns carry refuse. Rats drown in wells, and every jar is a breeding ground for sickness. You drink wine instead, sour and thinned with water, but even that cannot shield you entirely. Vermin thrive in the filth, rats scurrying across the rafters, fleas biting your ankles raw, lice nesting in your hair and burrowing into the seams of your tunic. You scratch until blood slicks your nails, but the itching never leaves. Sickness is woven into the fabric of daily life, clinging to you as tightly as your clothes. Doctors appear when you're already too weak to move, arriving with the arrogance of men who believe themselves saviours. They talk loudly of cures and carry their hands like priests holding relics. One brings herbs tied in bundles, pressing them to your face until the stench makes you gag. Another takes a dull knife and opens your veins, letting your strength drain into a bowl while muttering about humours. Too much blood, too much heat. A barber surgeon squeezes boils until pus bursts beneath his filthy fingernails, assuring you the sickness will leave with it. None of them cure you. They leave you weaker, bleeding, and still burning with fever. Their knives, their herbs, their assurances are masks for ignorance, The wealthy employ Greek physicians with polished speech and scrolls filled with the wisdom of Hippocrates and Galen. They diagnose with flourish, prescribe with confidence, and charge sums a plebeian will never hold in his lifetime. Yet their patients die too. Marble villas echo with funeral songs as often as insulae do. The difference is only in the quality of the lament. You cannot afford their learning, so you rely on barber surgeons and herb sellers, neighbours with concoctions of vinegar, garlic or ash. You choke down every bitter draught, knowing it will not help. Hope is the only medicine you can afford, and even that runs out. Superstition fills the gaps where knowledge fails. Charms are tied to your wrist to drive out spirits. Iron amulets are placed under your pillow to guard against nocturnal demons. A priest passes by to mutter prayers over you, his voice as empty as the bowl he extends for payment. Your family lights extra lamps at the shrine, their smoke staining the ceiling as though the gods might notice the offering. Herbs are hung above your bed, their scent choking the already foul air. You pray until your lips crack, your voice joining the chorus of Rome's endless petitions. The gods do not listen. They never have. The fever consumes days. Time becomes a blur, measured only in waves of heat and cold. Sweat soaks your straw. Your tunic clings to you like a second skin, and your muscles wither until even sitting upright is impossible. Your mind wanders into delirium, seeing shapes in the smoke and hearing voices whispering from the rafters. Every breath is a battle, your ribs aching with the effort, your throat raw from the rattle of coughs. You're not alone in this. The entire insula rings with groans, coughs, and the muffled cries of families losing another member. Death is not shocking here. It is routine. Weeks pass and the fever finally loosens its hold. You are thinner than before, ribs visible beneath your tunic, but you are upright, moving again through the streets of Rome. Work resumes because it must. Hunger allows no convalescence, and landlords do not accept sickness as an excuse for missed rent. You return to the rhythm of labour, though your body aches in ways it did not before. Joints stiff, breath shallow. You endure because survival has no alternative. And as you push yourself through the crowds of the Forum one morning, you hear the call of a tribune promising protection for the people. The tribune stands on a raised platform, arms spread wide, his voice booming across the square. He speaks of justice, of fairness, of shielding the plebeians from exploitation. He claims that Rome belongs to all its citizens, not only the patricians and the wealthy elite. He points toward the temples and the Senate House, declaring that those in power must answer to the people. The crowd roars its approval, their cheers echoing against the marble columns. You add your voice, not out of conviction, but because silence in such a crowd draws suspicion. On paper, you are a citizen. The law says you have rights, that your voice matters, that the assemblies exist to protect you. In practice, those rights dissolve into dust the moment you test them. The assemblies meet, yes, but the votes are weighted so that the wealthy dominate. Tribunes speak on behalf of the plebs, but their pockets are filled with patrician coin. Their voice is bought before they ever open their mouths. They promise bread and protection, but what arrives is a handful of grain and the same collapsing tenement you have always lived in. Rome loves to proclaim equality, but you feel the truth in your bones. Some citizens are carved into marble, others are ground into mortar. You stand in the crowd and listen, watching as the tribune gestures dramatically, his words carefully chosen to stir the masses. He rails against corruption, vowing to hold officials accountable. He swears to secure more grain, better housing, relief for the poor. You have heard all of it before, from men long since forgotten. The promises fall as predictably as ashes from a brazier, and they vanish just as quickly. Each speech is a performance, meant to pacify the hungry long enough to avoid riot. You know this, and yet you stay to listen, because there is nothing else to do, and hope, though false, is still a powerful distraction. Around you, the crowd murmurs approval. Some shout praise, others raise their hands in support. Old men nod with weary agreement. Women clutch children as though the tribune's words might protect them. Youths cheer with enthusiasm, born of inexperience. You watch their faces and feel the weight of disillusion. They still believe in the power of assemblies, in the value of their citizenship. You have lived too long in Rome to believe. You know the senators will retreat to their chambers, speak among themselves, and ensure nothing changes. The people roar and the Senate nods politely before returning to business as usual. The assembly's a theatre. Citizens gather, votes are cast, hands are raised, but the outcomes are already decided. The wealthy hold the strings, pulling them behind closed doors, ensuring that every decision benefits them first. A plebeian may shout himself hoarse, but his voice is swallowed in the marble halls, where only patricians are heard. You may be counted, but you are not considered. Your citizenship grants you the privilege of being ignored in an official capacity. You recall the legends of Rome's founding, stories told by teachers and priests. The Republic, they say, was built on the balance of power between classes, the rights of the people guarded by tribunes. But balance in Rome is like the scales in a dishonest merchant's stall, tilted from the start. The tribune shouts that he stands for the poor, but his tunic is freshly dyed, his sandals polished, his hair trimmed by a barber you could never afford. He does not live in an insula. He does not drink sour wine or choke on smoke at night. He stands above you in every sense, and his words are meant to keep you beneath him. You think of the taxes you pay, the rents that bleed you, the endless labour that breaks your back. All of it fuels the city, the roads, the temples, the games, the armies marching to distant provinces. You are told that your sacrifices are noble, that Rome is great because of its citizens. But when greatness is measured in marble and conquest, your role is only to suffer quietly. Your citizenship is a paper shield, one that burns easily when the city grows hungry for more. The crowd disperses slowly, their spirits buoyed by promises that will never materialize. Some walk away chatting eagerly about reforms to come. Others mutter about debts they hope will be forgiven. Still others smile as though they have already eaten their fill of the tribune's words. You walk away too, but your steps are heavy, your body aching with the familiar knowledge that nothing has changed. The speech was smoke, and smoke cannot feed you. By the time you limp home, the day is already waning. Your joints ache from standing too long, your lungs still weak from the fever that nearly took you. You think of old age and realise that Rome offers no rest, no retirement, no gentle end for its poor. Work grinds you down until your body gives out, and when it does, the city discards you as easily as ash swept from a brazier. The tribunes promise protection, but their words dissolve before they reach your insula. Empty words. You limp home, realising there's no retirement, only decay. Months slip into years. Your body stiffens with age, your joints ache when you carry loads, and your breath rattles in your chest when you climb the stairs. Work does not ease with time. It only grows heavier as your body weakens. You endure because you must, because survival is the only habit left. One night, after another day of labour that has bent your back and worn your legs to stumps, you lie on your straw and drift into uneasy sleep. The room is heavy with the familiar odours of sweat, waste jars and lamp smoke. You're too tired to think, too tired even to dream. When the smoke arrives, it pulls you awake instantly, acrid and choking, a smell you know too well. Your throat tightens, your eyes sting, and you hear it at once, the shouts, the pounding feet, the rising wails from below. The insula is burning. You stumble to your feet, your body heavier than it once was, slower than it should be, Fire licks upward through the stairwell, climbing like a predator, smoke pouring into every room. Neighbours flood the passage, clutching baskets, children, jars, anything they can carry. The air is a wall of heat, the noise a storm of terror. You're caught in the crush, pushed forward whether you want to move or not. The stairwell groans beneath the weight of bodies, boards cracking, as panicked feet hammer them without pause. You grip the railing, coughing, your chest already aching. Flames roar upward, devouring the lower floors, while the smoke descends from above, black and suffocating. You are trapped between them. The crowd surges like a tide, mothers screaming for children lost in the press, men shoving, fists flying as each tries to claim a space closer to survival. The old fall first, trampled and forgotten underfoot. You feel your legs faltering, your strength bleeding away with every breath you drag from the poisoned air. The beams give way with a thunderous crack, sparks rain down, blinding, searing, exposed skin. The stairwell becomes chaos, bodies shoving, tumbling, crushing one another as the structure beneath them collapses. You stumble, your grip on the railing tearing splinters into your palm, and crash to the floor. The crowd surges past, their faces wild, their mouths open in screams you can barely hear over the roar of the fire. You push yourself up once, twice, but your body fails you. Smoke claws down your throat, heat sears your lungs, and your vision swims black. The ceiling splits, a beam crashes down, flames exploding across the stairwell. The air itself feels alive, a living thing that bites and claws as you struggle to breathe. You collapse again, this time unable to rise. The world shrinks to firelight and shadows, to the weight of your body pressed against the floor, to the sound of flames devouring everything you have ever known. By dawn, nothing remains of the insula. The street is filled with ash, rubble, and families clawing through the ruins with bare hands. Smoke still rises from the blackened heap, carrying with it the stink of burnt flesh and scorched wood. Soldiers arrive to keep order, pushing the desperate aside, muttering about rebuilding. Landlords survey the wreckage, calculating profit in their heads, already planning the next block to rise from the ashes. Senators speak of regulations and rights, their words drifting through the forum like dust. The gods receive prayers and offerings, the priests chant, and Rome continues. But you do not. Your body is gone, consumed in the blaze. Your name is gone too, erased with the smoke. You are just another plebeian lost to a city that breeds fire like rats breed in straw. The neighbours who survive will forget you within weeks. Rome remembers emperors and generals, not the tenants who burn in their beds. And that brings us to the end of tonight's story. Not the image of Rome as marble columns, noble speeches and eternal grandeur, but the reality of millions of plebeians ground into dust by hunger, disease, noise and fire. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with another forgotten corner of history you'd like explored next. If you'd like early access to more of these quiet descents into forgotten history, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps more people find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers Andrew S. and Rich Davis. Sleep well.